Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I'm Susan Chekel-Lusignan, Director of Marketing and Program Development for the Friends and Foundation of the Rochester Public Library. FFRPL raises funds, presents programs, supports special projects, helps to create specialized spaces, and purchases supplemental materials and equipment for the Rochester Public Library. And we welcome you to our Fall Book Sandwiched In series. We have a wonderful lineup this season, and we are delighted to be back here on site for this in-person program. Our thanks go to those who help fund programs like these through FFRPL, the dedicated FFRPL committee members who curate and organize these events, our guest speakers and artists who graciously share their time and talents with us, the library staff who help with our setup and production, and the thousands of people who attend each year. A bit of housekeeping. We are requiring advance registration for all the reviews this fall, and our newsletter subscribers will receive the registration link by email. We will also post the link to our website where you can sign up to receive our newsletters if you aren't already on the list. And of course, you can call or email us if you need assistance registering. Masking is mandatory in the library. We'll continue to limit capacity and have socially distanced seating, and no food or beverages will be provided or permitted. We will live stream each review to Facebook and also post the events with closed captioning to the RPL YouTube channel at Rochester Public Library, New York, about a week after the review. To access the induction loop in the auditorium, please set your hearing aid to the T switch. Thank you for helping to make it possible for us to present in-person events while keeping everyone safe during the ongoing pandemic. Obviously, we realize that for our patrons in the room today, the registration worked. So I'd also like to extend a special thank you to those who weren't able to get tickets and are watching our live stream today or are waiting for the YouTube video to be posted. We do appreciate your patience and understanding as we all try to navigate this as best we can. We'd also like to welcome Lila Grills and her group watching from the Mendon Public Library. I hope by now some of you have had a chance to introduce yourselves to FFRPL's new executive director, Donna Borges. Donna previously worked in alumni relations at Nazareth College, and she comes to FFRPL with extensive experience in administration, fundraising, community engagement, and program development. In just a few weeks, Donna has already made a very big impact on our small organization, and we are very grateful to have her on board. Please introduce yourselves to Donna after the program or via email or phone for those who are watching online. If you haven't already had a chance to see the Art of the Book exhibit across the street on the main floor of the Rundell building, we hope you will visit before it closes on November 1st. FFRPL is a founding sponsor of the exhibit, and we are proud to be a part of the 10th anniversary. This year's show includes artist books, altered books, and paper sculpture from 73 artists sent from 8 countries around the world. For a unique opportunity to participate in a free virtual version of Central Library's event with Rochester Reads botanist Robin Wall Kimmerer, and author of Braiding Sweetgrass on Wednesday, October 20th, please visit our website at ffrpl.org. Today's review is of Empire of Pain, The Secret History of the Sackler Dynasty by Patrick Radenkief. And it's a portrait of 3 generations of the Sackler family whose fortune was built by Valium and whose reputation was destroyed by OxyContin. Jonathan Cohn of the Washington Post says, the opioid epidemic has killed nearly 500,000 Americans over the past 2 decades. Many of their loved ones, along with public health advocates and experts, believe that one very rich, very famous family has never fully faced the consequences for its role in those deaths. Empire of Pain is an attempt to change that, to hold the family accountable by telling its story as the saga of a dynasty driven by arrogance, avarice, and indifference to mass suffering. This is a timely and critical topic, as of course all of you know. Yesterday's Rochester Business Journal reported that New York Attorney General Letitia James has begun a Heal New York tour across the state, where she is delivering the first of up to $1.5 billion to combat the opioid epidemic. The funds, which are being delivered to each of the state's 10 regions, come from different settlements James has negotiated. Our presenter today is Dr. Bernard Sussman, Professor of Clinical Medicine and Medical Humanities. A former primary care physician in Rochester, Dr. Sussman is currently a member of the Divisions of Palliative Care, Medical Humanities, and Bioethics at the U of R Medical Center. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Bernard Sussman to our podium.
Good afternoon. 18 months ago, at the start of the lockdown in March 2020, I was struggling to keep focus on any reading at all. One of the last books I borrowed from the library before it closed was Say Nothing by Patrick Radenkief. This saga about the troubles in Northern Ireland proved the perfect choice. Keefe told an intimate moral history with meticulously researched detail and a propulsive narrative that kept me riveted. In Empire of Pain, Keefe tells another tale of moral transgression. I'm pleased to tell you that this book, too, is meticulously researched and compellingly plotted. Empire of Pain examines the history of the epidemic of opioid addiction in the United States over the past 20 years and its links to the drug OxyContin. His story does not dwell on the lives of those addicted to opioids, but rather focuses on the family responsible for the manufacture and marketing of OxyContin, the Sacklers, a family famed for its philanthropy, as well as infamous for its culpability in the epidemic of opioid abuse. Empire of Pain is a multi-generational tale. Fully 1/3 of the book describes the life of the elder member of the Sackler family, Arthur Sackler, who died nearly a decade before the release of OxyContin. Nonetheless, Arthur Sackler is a pivotal figure in this family story. He established a template for ambition, professional striving, marketing ingenuity, unethical business practice, marital infidelity, and philanthropic grandiosity that was followed by his younger brothers, Mortimer and Raymond, as well as their children. The Sackler brothers grew up in an immigrant home in Brooklyn, New York during the Depression. Arthur had omnivorous interests, intellectual gifts, and extraordinary energy. In school, he began selling and writing advertisements for publications at Erasmus High School. He continued these efforts throughout college and medical school at NYU. He worked multiple part-time jobs, waiting tables, and working as a soda jerk between classes, while also honing his marketing skills on student publications. The money he saved was sent to his parents to support the family and eventually the education of his brothers. Arthur pursued training in psychiatry. He was motivated by empathy for those suffering from mental health problems and was an enlightened critic of eugenic assumptions about the genetic origins of psychiatric illness. His medical career was as a psychiatric researcher. He thought medications would and should be the vanguard of psychiatric treatment as opposed to electroconvulsive therapy or Freudian analysis. Yet he never limited himself to medical research alone. He worked for and soon owned an advertising agency that represented Roche Pharmaceuticals. Roche was the manufacturer of Librium and Valium, the minor tranquilizers that became the first blockbuster medications in the post-World War II United States. anxiolytic trailblazing drugs for the age of anxiety. Arthur Sackler was indispensable to the success of Librium and Valium. He was the man who invented the wheel when it came to medical marketing. He adapted what he had learned selling advertising for student publications and what he had learned from Madison Avenue to the sale of medicines. Arthur Sackler pioneered direct-to-physician marketing. He employed and sometimes fabricated physicians to endorse Librium and Valium. He hired sales representatives to deliver his message to practicing doctors, not to indoctrinate or manipulate them, he said, but to educate physicians. Arthur claimed that doctors were too knowledgeable and sophisticated, too noble, he thought, to be swayed by crass advertisement. He used extensive medical advertising in reputable medical journals, but also in lesser trade publications. He published one of these trade publications, a weekly paper that was supported by Roche Advertising, while at the same time publishing articles promoting their products. All the while, Sackler's ownership remained silent. His name never appeared on the paper's masthead. Roche Pharmaceuticals' success was also Arthur Sackler's. The more Librium and Valium that was sold, the more he earned. He was paid by commission. Arthur Sackler became an enormously wealthy man. Marketing for Librium and Valium emphasized their safety and freedom from risk of addiction. When evidence of dependence and withdrawal on these drugs emerged, Sackler directed efforts to attribute these problems not to the medication, but to the addictive personalities of bad patients who had abused them. The financial success story of Arthur Sackler established the family template for the contamination of medical virtues with the profit motive of business. The Hippocratic obligation to do no harm became subservient to greed. Greed was fueled by marketplace cunning, flagrant conflict of interest ventures, and compromise of regulatory agencies, the Food and Drug Administration in particular. These transgressions were to be repeated and amplified by Arthur Sackler's younger brothers and then their children. The Sackler family blueprint was also notable for multiple marriages, conspicuous consumption of luxurious estates around the world, extravagant purchases of rare art treasures, and self-promotion in the world of global philanthropy. While Arthur Sackler maintained secrecy about his many businesses and the sources of his wealth, he cultivated an identity of one of the world's most prominent philanthropists, providing hundreds of millions of dollars to support medical institutions, universities, and art museums. Sackler wings and galleries, medical schools, and research institutes proliferated. The Sackler name appeared on the Smithsonian's Arthur M. Sackler Gallery in Washington, the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, a new art and archaeology museum in Beijing, a school of medicine in Tel Aviv, buildings and institutes at Harvard, Yale, Columbia, Tufts, and that's just the beginning. In 1952, Arthur Sackler purchased a small pharmaceutical company to be run by his younger brothers. He was to be a silent partner. This company, Purdue Frederick, under the direction of Mortimer and Raymond Sackler, developed an inventory of a small number of pedestrian products. The staples of their inventory were betadine, a surgical scrub, the laxative Senecot, and Cerumenex, drops for earwax. Their business was profitable, but modest by the standards of large pharmaceutical companies. In 1966, the Sacklers purchased an English pharmaceutical company named Knapp Laboratories. In the 1970s, Knapp Laboratories developed the first orally available morphine tablet. Prior to that, morphine was available only by injection. Knapp subsequently, in the 1970s, developed a special coating for oral morphine, which provided for a slow-release delivery system. This continuous system was the basis for the breakthrough product, the long-acting MS-Contin. MS-Contin was first manufactured in the United States by Purdue Frederick and released in 1984. Richard Sackler, the son of Raymond, had, like his father and uncles, attended medical school. He never intended, however, to practice medicine. After but 1 year of medical residency, Richard Sackler joined Purdue in 1971. Unlike his father, who as head of Purdue displayed charm and gracious manners, Richard was widely perceived to be brusque and condescending. His leadership style was intrusive and entitled. He demanded unquestioned loyalty to the company and to his family. Richard Sackler took charge of the MS-Contin campaign. Under his hard-driving direction, MS-Contin resulted in $170 million in annual sales. This was new and enticing territory for the Sacklers. It fed a new addiction of their own. They were hooked on money. Purdue, under Richard's direction, recognized that opioids were seen as addictive, dangerous drugs reserved for use at the end of life. This stigma was an obstacle to market growth. Purdue responded with a counteroffensive, labeling the risks of addiction as overblown and identifying morphine as the safest and best treatment for chronic pain, just what was needed to address an epidemic of untreated national suffering. This well-coordinated strategy made the once sleepy Purdue Frederick a major pharmaceutical player. The financial rewards of MS-Contin, however, threatened to be time-limited. Purdue and the Sacklers worried about the approaching loss of their patent from MS-Contin and sought an alternative drug to expand company profits. They found their answer in the development of OxyContin. OxyContin, a long-acting formulation of oxycodone, a potent opioid analgesic, was a natural fit for the treatment of cancer-related pain. Richard Sackler and the Purdue team saw this niche, however, as a potential problem. However lucrative treatment of cancer pain might be, marketing OxyContin for non-cancer pain promised dramatically greater financial payoff. Purdue's challenge was to change the perception of the medical profession regarding the safety and therapeutic role of opioids. Purdue targeted non-pain specialists with a fury. Family physicians and other primary care doctors were urged by company representatives to use OxyContin for managing chronic pain of all varieties. Despite the fact that OxyContin is substantially more potent than morphine and therefore should be prescribed with additional caution, Purdue Pharma, a newly incorporated pharmaceutical spin-off of Purdue Frederick created in the early 1990s, Purdue Pharma obscured that truth. Purdue Pharma encouraged the belief by physicians that OxyContin was weaker than morphine and encouraged wider use of their new drug for non-malignant pain. They also claimed that OxyContin was non-addictive because its coded delivery system prevented peaks and troughs of drug levels. They maintained that this nullified patient experience of highs and lows and prevented the risk of addiction. This claim, however, was never evaluated with medical research and was fully unjustified. Despite the aggressive, unsubstantiated claims in Purdue's application for FDA approval, OxyContin was approved in uncharacteristically rapid fashion in late December 1995. The package insert approved by the Food and Drug Administration included the statement, and this is a quote, that the OxyContin delivery system is believed to reduce abuse liability, an extraordinary statement on its face. The FDA accepted the untested and unproven contention that the continuous delivery system uncoupled OxyContin from abuse potential, and they expressed belief in this assertion. Belief rather than evidence was the grounds for FDA authorization. There's more to the story that maybe we can get into later. OxyContin entered the market in 1996 with a high-pressure marketing campaign relying on legions of on-the-ground sales representatives, saturation advertising, paid medical experts who spoke at seminars and conferences on behalf of the safety of opioids, and a narrative emphasizing dedication to the goal of relieving the suffering of millions who lived with untreated, chronic, non-malignant pain. The message was to start with OxyContin and stay with OxyContin. Sales representatives urged doctors to use high doses of OxyContin and to raise those doses with confidence that under a doctor's care there was no risk of abuse or addiction. In turn, these sales representatives were rewarded with lucrative bonuses for meeting and exceeding marketing targets. The higher the doses of OxyContin prescribed, the more money Purdue made, and the higher the ceiling-free bonuses for the field team. Ultimately, $35 billion of OxyContin was sold between 1996 and 2016. Evidence of widespread abuse and addiction to OxyContin rapidly emerged. Purdue had indication of this within the first year of its release. The claims that the slow-release delivery system prevented both highs and lows were refuted by patient experience. The buzz and high of OxyContin became common knowledge on the street. Furthermore, while originally approved for every 12-hour dosing, patients early on reported withdrawal symptoms after only 8 hours. Consequently, off-label every 8-hour dosing became widespread, a practice that, of course, increased Purdue's sales figures. Package inserts warned against crushing tablets and disabling the slow-release delivery. These inserts, in turn, became an instructional manual for abuse of OxyContin. Crushed and dissolved tablets were soon being snorted and injected across the country. Patrick Radenkief does a careful job of tracking the devastation that OxyContin caused in communities across the nation, particularly rural communities in New England, Ohio, and Appalachia, where unemployment and a legacy of chronic physical injuries from punishing physical labor created a fertile environment for medical misuse of opioids and patient abuse. But though opioid addiction may have been concentrated in certain rural communities, no states, counties, or cities were safe from the scourge of this deadly epidemic. This accounts for the thousands of lawsuits eventually joined against Purdue Pharma by states and counties across the United States fighting the opioid epidemic. Responsibility for the public health crisis of opioid addiction is not limited to Purdue Pharma and the Sackler family. Other pharmaceutical companies, in particular Johnson & Johnson, as well as pharmacy chains such as Walmart and CVS, have played their role in disregarding the dangers of opioid use. Federal agencies such as the Food and Drug Administration, the Department of Justice, and members of Congress proved all too susceptible to pharmaceutical money, legal pressures, and crony corruption. And the medical profession played its role too, both through unscrupulous and criminal prescribing practices of doctors running pain mills and the thousands of ostensible medical experts who received lucrative stipends to spread misinformation about the safety of OxyContin and other opioids. Keefe keeps focus on the Sackler family because, as he convincingly demonstrates, they pioneered the the aggressive, dishonest, and unethical practices misleading the medical profession and the public about the risks of their golden goose, OxyContin. And when faced with incontrovertible evidence of the widespread crisis of addiction and OxyContin abuse, they deflected accountability, callously blamed those suffering with addiction and dying for their own devastation, and continue until today to express no remorse for the role their business practices played in our public health crisis. In closing, I feel a responsibility to say something about the role the medical profession has played in the opioid crisis. The story of OxyContin and other opioids can too easily be used as grounds to fuel outrage and point fingers at others while avoiding self-examination. Empire of Pain is at root an ethical investigation, implicating many in malfeasance and misconduct. This complex history requires a careful self-examination by the medical profession of the role it has played in the national nightmare of opioid addiction. I have wrestled with these questions for years, in particular the role my field of palliative care has played. Keefe offers critical, but I think glancing attention to the question of how the medical profession contributed to the opioid crisis. I think he provides insufficient explanation for the change in medical culture that led to more liberal use of opioids. Until the 1990s, opioids were avoided because of fears of addiction and overdose. This was true whether prescribed for malignant pain at the end of life or non-malignant conditions. The risks of opioids were commonly exaggerated by some doctors. As a consequence, too many patients with severe illness suffered with inadequately treated pain. In response, a movement to bring new focus on pain relief was mobilized. Questions about pain became a routine part of all medical encounters. Palliative care providers caring for many who suffered from unacceptable pain at life's end played important roles in this movement. I believe these efforts were justified and necessary. There was also, however, some rebound reaction to the old stigmatization and avoidance of opioids that went too far. Academic voices promoted drugs like OxyContin as being without risk of addiction, a message identical to the fallacious marketing claims of Purdue Pharma. Some leaders in the new field of palliative care and in pain medicine provided professional expert opinion that buttressed the message carried by pharmaceutical companies to practicing clinicians about the benefits of early, widespread use of opioids for conditions like chronic back pain or arthritis. There was no evidence to support these claims of safety or of efficacy. Like the FDA, pain experts accepted the claims of an unscrupulous company on little more than faith and hope that the claims of safety were valid. This is a monumental failure for which medicine, and my field of palliative care in particular, is responsible. That is not how reliable, scientifically grounded medical consensus should be established. How we address and learn from this failure will speak to the professional integrity of medicine, as it should to the integrity of other professions that have played roles in this national tragedy. Time does not permit comprehensive review of all that this impressive book explores. The full account of legal actions brought against Purdue Pharma and the Sackler family awaits your discovery. Keefe's indictment of the Sacklers is unsparing. He truly hates them. What was new to me and deeply disheartening was to understand how money, prestigious legal defense, and political influence have profited the Sacklers from criminal and financial accountability. Large teams of elite lawyers and political insiders being paid tens of millions of dollars, including Rudy Giuliani and Eric Holder, were at some time engaged by the Sackler family. Were it not for an independent press, what is documented in Empire of Pain might never have been revealed. It's a story that needed to be told and deserves to be read. Thank you very much.